Washington, United States. In a scene straight out of a political drama, the US president was mid-interview when history walked in. At precisely 10:42 a.m., the Secretary of State entered the room, a folded note in his hand, and quietly leaned toward President Donald Trump. "I just got word from the Secretary of State that we're close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me quickly, so we'll just accept a few more questions," said Trump, smiling briefly before turning back to the reporters. Those few spontaneous words marked the climax of months of hidden shuttle diplomacy, a moment that would ripple from Washington to Tel Aviv, Doha, and Cairo. For the first time since the devastating Gaza conflict began 2 years earlier, both Israel and Hamas were on the verge of signing a US-brokered ceasefire. Behind the cameras, that note contained confirmation from Cairo. Hamas had agreed in principle to Trump's 20-point peace framework. It was the culmination of back-channel talks involving Egyptian intelligence, Qatari mediators, and American envoys led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. As Trump paused his interview, his aides immediately began coordinating a secure call with Cairo. Within minutes, the White House Situation Room lit up. Lines opened to Tel Aviv, Doha, and Ankara. Insiders later described the moment as the fastest diplomatic cascade since the Abraham Accords. Just hours earlier, negotiators in Egypt had finalized a draft outlining a 3-phase ceasefire plan: the release of 20 hostages held in Gaza, phased Israeli troop withdrawals, and gradual disarmament discussions supervised by a multinational monitoring mission, including Turkey and Egypt. Trump had been briefed overnight, but the final confirmation, Hamas's signed acceptance, came as he sat before the cameras. According to AFP pool reporters, the president's expression shifted only briefly, a subtle nod, a half smile, before returning to the interview, concealing the diplomatic thunderbolt that had just struck. Within the hour, cable networks were buzzing. News tickers flashed. Breaking: Trump receives live update on Gaza peace. Markets reacted instantly. Oil prices dipped 4% and gold slid as traders bet on reduced regional tension. At the State Department, Secretary Rubio told reporters, "We're entering the most delicate phase now, ensuring every party holds the line." Meanwhile, at the White House, staffers rushed to prepare the president's departure for an emergency situation room meeting. Sources later confirmed that within 30 minutes of the televised moment, Trump convened his national security team, CIA, Pentagon, and State Department officials, joined by Secure Link. On the table were verification reports from Egypt, Israeli Defense Forces confirmation of a stand-down order, and Qatari intelligence assurances that Hamas had agreed to release hostages within 72 hours. As one senior official later put it, that note changed everything. It meant 2 years of diplomacy had just succeeded on live TV. By mid-afternoon Cairo time, Egyptian negotiator Abbas Kamel went public. All sides have accepted the US-brokered framework for a humanitarian ceasefire, with implementation to begin immediately. The announcement triggered scenes of celebration in parts of Gaza and cautious applause in Tel Aviv, where the Israeli cabinet was informed that Washington had secured a binding commitment from Hamas through Qatar. Hours later, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan declared Ankara's readiness to join the implementation group. "We will participate in the working group that will monitor the implementation of the agreement on the ground," he said, aligning Turkey with the US and Egypt for the first time in this conflict's mediation process. Analysts compared the event to the Camp David moment of the late 1970s, not in scale, but in symbolism. For weeks, diplomats had hinted that Trump wanted a visible, cinematic reveal of the deal. Few expected it would happen live during an interview. That unscripted exchange transformed into a defining image, an American president learning of peace progress not in a war room but under bright studio lights surrounded by journalists. According to aides, the president's strategy hinged on dual pressure, military deterrence against Iran, and diplomatic incentives for Israel and Hamas. In private briefings, Trump later told lawmakers, "If we hadn't struck Iran's weapons sites last month, we wouldn't be here today." Force brought the sides to reason. Critics called it coercive diplomacy. Supporters called it peace through pressure. But even skeptics acknowledged it worked. Following the broadcast interruption, Trump cancelled the rest of his media schedule. Marine One was prepped for immediate departure to Andrews Air Force Base. From there, he oversaw calls with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Egyptian President El-Sisi, and Qatari Emir Tamim Al Thani. each confirmed their signatures on the Phase 1 framework. By midnight Washington time, the State Department released an official statement. The United States welcomes the joint commitment of Israel and Hamas to the Trump peace framework and thanks Egypt and Qatar for their indispensable role. In Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron praised the development as an essential step. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz called it a bold diplomatic turning point. And in the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV described it as a ray of moral light amid years of darkness. Meanwhile, human rights groups urged vigilance, warning that implementation, not announcement, would test the deal's survival. As dawn broke over Gaza the next morning, the first ceasefire took hold. Drone footage showed empty skies over Rafah, aid convoys crossing from Egypt, and residents emerging from shelters. In Washington, that fleeting moment, the note, the whisper, the calm interruption, had already become an image of diplomacy in real time.